nominee. And the process started with the advertisement for the fulfillment of this position. And Honorable Speaker, about 261 Kenyans applied for this position. And out of those 261 Kenyans, 2 nominees were identified. And the first nominee was Dr. Phyllis Wambui Wagasha, and the second nominee was Rugut, Mr. Rugut. Honorable Speaker, for PSC to forward this name to Parliament, knowing very well that this nominee does not meet the requirements for appointment, means that this Parliament must censor Public Service Commission. Honorable Speaker, we have this House, we have seen Public Service Commission making various recommendations, even some forwarded to this House. But Honorable Speaker, this House has never asked what is the performance, assess the performance of Public Service Commission. Honorable Speaker, this is a commission which exists to support political actions. This commission is not competent, it is not professional, and it does not look at various factors, even before there's 4 nominees here. Last time, Honorable Speaker, you know that this PSC forwarded nominees, approved appointment of the so-called CAS, which, Honorable Speaker, you know the courts have rejected the appointment. And this House has done nothing, even to invite PSC to come to answer. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, what I want to say also, Honorable Speaker, is that as a country, we cannot condemn people because of age. We know that there are many people who are aged, but they are very productive. Honorable Speaker, if you go to some countries in the West, there are people in their 90s who are still very, very productive. Even Kinyua, Honorable Speaker, there's a guy called Kinyua. Kinyua, who was the former head of civil service, Honorable Speaker. Kinyua is still active and is still being appointed. Honorable Speaker, this House cannot be used, to condemn innocent Kenyans because of age. I want to disagree with my colleagues who have submitted that this lady does not meet the qualification for this appointment because of age. Honorable Speaker, if you read this report, you will see that the committee is saying here that the lady met all the criteria that are set out, including competence and ability and education. And therefore, when it comes to age, then now we are saying because she's 75, she cannot sing, she cannot even sing in church. Honorable Speaker, I want to disagree, and I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that most Kenyans go to school after their retirement. By the way, Honorable Speaker, after I leave Parliament, I will go back to school. And I will expect this country to give me an opportunity to serve this country after I've increased my educational level. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that the reasons that have been submitted here for rejection of this lady, I do not agree with them, and I want this House to support the appointment of Dr. Wagacha to go and serve in this position. In any case, Honorable Speaker, Salaries and Remuneration Commission is not a running competition. The job does not want you to go there and run or play football. This is a job where you are supposed to go and use your intellect. This lady has gathered a lot of knowledge in her career, which is spanning over years. Therefore, to say that she's old, she cannot perform, this is not right. Unless to be a commissioner in SRC, you need to be running every morning 5 hours, you need to go to the gym, you need to lift weight. That is not the description of this position, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I want to plead with this House that we must support this lady to be given this job, because I know what the politicians are trying to do, Honorable Speaker. They want us to reject this lady so that the next person to be appointed is Mr. Rugut. That is the intention of this appointment. Once you reject this lady, the next person to be appointed will be Mr. Rugut, because PSC forwarded 2 names to the President, this lady and Mr. Rugut. So,
yes, Honorable Samuel Chepkonga.
Honorable Chepkonga wants us to allow this.
Yeah. I stand pursuant to Standing Order 92 on the veracity of the information the Honorable Atandi is purporting to offer to this House. I have never heard anywhere where a Mr. Rugut is intended to substitute.
We get you, Honorable Chepkonga, just sit down. Honorable Samuel Atandi, when did you leave Parliament to work in the offices of the appointing authority to know who they intend to appoint?
Honorable Speaker, the PSC forwarded 2 names to the president. The first name was Dr. Phyllis Wambui Wagacha, and the second name is Mr. Jafta Kiplimo Rugut. The president picked Dr. Phyllis Wambui. The alternative is Mr. Kiplimo Rugut. So once we reject this name,
Honorable Atandi, you know, you must be careful with the statements you make in Parliament. Which law is this which says that when number 1 is dropped, the process is not started afresh? Number 2 on the list takes over.
Honorable Speaker,
is there a law like that you can quote?
Honorable Speaker, you are insinuating that the process will be started afresh. I'm telling you that because I know the politicians on that side.
I'm asking under what law?
No.
Because if there is no law you are quoting, I would rather you withdrew that part and concluded your submissions.
Honorable Speaker, I'm being a politician, and you know this House is full of politicians. And we know that these appointments are all political. There's nothing legal in these appointments. Because if there was any law to be followed, then this name would have not ended here.
The Honorable Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, rise on a point of order because you have given very clear instructions to the Honorable Samuel Atandi that he withdraws and apologizes to the House, because as much as he wants to play politics, this is a house of politicians, but not a house of politics. Here we deal with facts as they are. The law as it is, and Mr. Speaker, you have guided him well to tell us under what law are you saying if you don't pick number 1, you go to number 2. And I know he has no knowledge of any law that exists.
No.
He has no knowledge of such a law, and if he has, he either gives us that law or he simply withdraws what he had said and apologizes to the House, but he cannot use that opportunity to continue saying more unpalatable things on the same issue.
Honorable Atandi, you have made your point. Why don't you make it easy for the House?
Honorable Speaker, I withdraw.
By withdrawing that,
Speaker,
thing that is not supported by law.
Honorable Speaker, I withdraw with caution, but to also say that, Honorable Speaker.
No, you have withdrawn. Thank you very much. You can proceed.
Honorable Speaker, if the next nominee, in case this House rejects the nominee of Phyllis, I would be sad, Honorable Speaker, if the name of the second fellow is sent here for appointment. Then at that point, maybe the House will agree with me. But Honorable Speaker, let me conclude by saying that I have not seen anything in this report that should make this House not to nominate Dr. Phyllis Wambui Wagacha for this position. For the reasons I've explained, Honorable Speaker, that this position is not a position that is meant to be performed using a lot of energy, and you don't need to be an athlete, a boxer, to be able to perform as a commissioner. And the reasons that have been advanced by the commission on account of age does not make sense, because there are so many Kenyans, including the former head of public service, who I think is in his 90s, and is still serving in public service. So, Honorable Speaker, I submit that I reject this report by the commission.
What is out of order, Honorable Nyikal?
Chair, is it in order that this House continues with the discussion that although in political terms is actually quite reasonable, but actually completely unconstitutional? We are talking about the rights of a person. And if you go to Article 27 of the Constitution, 27(4) says, the state shall not discriminate directly or indirectly against any person or any ground, including, and it goes on, age. So that is completely unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, you go on Article 57. Article 57 of our Constitution, and it will be quite clear that what we are discussing and our reasons are actually completely unconstitutional. Let's give me time, Mr. Speaker. 57. All the members of the society, the state shall take measures to ensure the right of all the persons to fully participate in the affairs of the society. If you take those two articles, the basic reasons we are giving against this lady are actually...
Honorable Nyikal, you have raised a constitutional issue. But Honorable Nyikal is not telling us whether those provisions in the Constitution conferring rights to elderly persons are subject to restrictions or limitations under Article 24 of the Constitution. And I can assure you, Honorable Nyikal, they are subject to limitation. One limitation is found in the law setting the retirement age of everybody, in spite of those provisions of the Constitution saying that you shall not discriminate against a person on account of age. The law setting retirement age puts it at 60 years for persons who are different, and for 65 years for persons living with disability. So I can assure you the House is not offending any law to debate and to make a determination on this matter. And honorable members, Honorable Chepkonga had stood on his feet. You know what standing order number 95 requires of me. I therefore do now put the question that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it. Mover.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply.
Yeah, honorable members, I now put the question that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Labor in its report on the vetting of a nominee for the appointment as a member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, laid on the table of the House. Who is that honorable member walking out when I will put the question again? Honorable members, I now put the question that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Labor in its report on the vetting of a nominee for the appointment as a member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 27 June 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 250, Subarticle 2B of the Constitution, Section 7, Subsection 1 of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act 2011, and Section 8, Subsection 1 of the Public Appointments and Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House rejects the appointment of Dr. Phyllis Wambui Wagasha as a member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa.
Mover. Give the mic to the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining in its consideration of the ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 4th May 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8, Subsection 4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, approves the ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of importation into Africa and the control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. Honorable Speaker, this is a very important thing, and I hope, Honorable Speaker, you remember what has happened in this country. We have had the worst drought in 40 years. And of course, it is because of us not checking our environment and not taking into consideration some of the materials or waste that harm our environment. Honorable Speaker, the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and the control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa was submitted to the National Assembly on the 20th July 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, they negotiated this convention, Honorable Speaker, was negotiated 12 months by 12 nations of the Organization of the African Unity. Honorable Speaker, and this was done on, in Mali on 30th January 1991, and it came into force on the 22nd April 1998. Honorable Speaker, 35 African countries and states have signed the convention. Kenya signed the convention on the 17th December 2003. And Honorable Speaker, it is important for us to recognize that this administration is taking seriously about environmental matters. Imagine something that came to this country in 2003, almost 20 years ago, is now being brought by to this House for us to be able to approve it. Honorable Speaker, the committee did not receive any memoranda in support or to the contrary on the convention by close of business on 8th January 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee held, of course, consultative meetings on the convention with the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, Forestry and Mining, and the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, and lastly, with the Office of the Attorney General. Honorable Speaker, among the few observations that we came across as a committee, Honorable Speaker, Article 2, subsection 5 of the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, it provides that the general rule of international law shall form part of the laws of Kenya, while Article 2, subsection 6 of the Constitution provides that any treaty, convention ratified by Kenya shall form part of the laws of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, the conventions are already reflected in the laws of Kenya through the Constitution, and in particular, Honorable Speaker, Article 42 that guarantees Kenyan citizens the right to a clean and healthy environment, and Article 69, subsection 1G, that obligates the state to eliminate processes and activities that are likely to endanger the environment. Honorable Speaker, under the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, famously known as EMCA Act of 1999, Kenya has banned the importation of waste into the country. And Honorable Speaker, you will agree with me that most of these countries, every time we think of donations, particularly these electronic devices, everybody is rushing to go and get computers and other electronic devices to be donated into the country. Not because they are of any important use, Honorable Speaker. They are just looking for a dumping place. And that is why everybody is rushing. Another organization here will tell you we have received donations of up to 5,000 computers and laptops. Honorable Speaker, this convention, and once Kenya has ratified this, then we will have a check on how we will be able to manage any donations, particularly electronic donations that are brought into this country, which are harmful to our environment, where this country don't want to have the waste in their country, so they look for a country where they can be able to donate the waste that comes to harm our environment. Honorable Speaker, among the other observations that we also observed is that the law will stipulate a clear procedure and have implementation mechanism to ensure effective hazardous waste management. And Honorable Speaker, this is very key to this country. Honorable Speaker, dumping of radioactive waste, again, will be, and Honorable Speaker, this radioactive waste has become a very big issue. And we of course, there is this Radiation Protection Board that does check any materials at the border, at any entry point in this country, that tries to check and address any material that has radioactive effects. They are able to check it at any entry point, and we want to thank the good work that the Radiation Protection Board that is doing. Honorable Speaker, Article 27 provides for withdrawal at any time. So again, we are not, locked into this convention forever. If we think at some point that because of all the businesses that we also want to have, that some of those are identified in the convention, the materials, that we cannot be able to bring them into this country for purposes of our industrialization, manufacturing, and other things. Again, this convention provides for our withdrawal closure at any time after 3 years from the date at which the convention has entered into force for a party. Honorable Speaker, parties also agree on the scale of contribution to the recurrent budget. Honorable Speaker, this has some budgetary issues. And of course, Kenya will contribute towards the budgetary provisions for the Secretariat, and also consider the establishment of a revolving fund to assist on the interim basis to ease the emergency situation, to minimize damage from disasters or accident arising from transboundary movement of hazardous waste or during disposal of the same. Honorable Speaker, I remember one day we had a crisis in the ocean where the ship that brings had a leak. And of course, it affects our environment in a very big way. The marine, the fish, and things like that. Again, when such an occurrence happens, again, these funds, the revolving fund, assuming it happened in the Indian Ocean, at the shores of Indian Ocean in Kenya, again, this fund will go towards addressing that emergency for us to be able to, not to affect our environment. Honorable Speaker, Article pursuant to Section 8, subsection 4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act, number 45 of 2012, the National Assembly may approve the ratification of the treaty with or without reservation. Honorable Speaker, from the engagement that we had with the ministry that is concerned, and the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and the Office of the Attorney General, Honorable Speaker, we didn't come across any clause that needed an amendment, and so us as a committee, Honorable Speaker, we approved the convention as it was placed after, of course, doing due diligence as a committee. Honorable Speaker, having considered the submission and analyzed documents tabled before the committee, and pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act, the House approves the ratification of Bamako Convention on the ban of importation into Africa and the control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. Honorable Speaker, this is a very important convention. I ask my colleagues and honorable members in this House to consider agreeing with the committee so that we can be able to become part and parcel. Since 2003, Honorable Speaker, that is quite so many years, I think over 20 years. Honorable Speaker, I also want to remind this House that the President of the Republic of Kenya is the chair of the African Conference of Climate Change, which will be having a huge, big conference here in September, Honorable Speaker, and him being the chair. And with this kind of ratification being in the country for 20 years without getting approval by Parliament, then it becomes an issue. So we will be doing this country justice. We will be doing our president, who is the chair of the African Conference on Climate Change, a big boost that by the time they come, we will have ratified. I want to thank this House. We did approve 2 of the other treaties on matters of environmental nature for us to be able to protect the environment. Honorable Speaker, countries have invested huge amounts of money for us to be able to protect our environment. And Honorable Speaker, our committee is on its feet to try and protect any environmental effect, be it coming from any industries, be it coming from any manufacturing sector, because, Honorable Speaker, the effect of such environmental effect was felt by this in this country for the last 1 year. So I think when the President will be chairing that conference, the Climate Change Conference caucus in Kenya in September, then we'll have approved almost all the other. Honorable Speaker, finally the committee is thankful to your office, to the office of the Clerk of the National Assembly for the logistical and technical support accorded to it during its sitting. The Ministry for their participation and submission during the consideration of the convention. Honorable Speaker, I therefore request my very able chair, Honorable Charles Kamuren, the Vice Chair of this committee, to second. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand to second the ratification of Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and the control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. Honorable Speaker, this convention is really very important, specifically to this country, because any waste that is brought to our country, or rather to Africa, is harmful to our people, and not only the people, but also to the wild animals, as well as the environment. And you know the changes and the challenges that we are undergoing as a result of climate change. This is another way that we can be and we will be able to control and rectify the challenges that we are undergoing as a result of this climate change. The negotiation, which started way back 1999, up to now, I think it is the right time that we, as Kenya, we be part of this by approving this convention so that we can be active and also relevant, and we be part of equals to the other states of Africa. When we met with the relevant ministries, including the Office of Attorney General, it came clearly that there is nowhere that this convention will interfere with our constitution. It is in line with our constitution. It will enhance what we had approved as this house way back in 1999, when this house came up with the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, which assisted this country to ban any wastes as a result of plastic. As we can remember very well, that there was a need that we control plastics, and any waste that will be bringing or interfering with our environment and the lives of Kenyans. As per Article 42 of our Constitution, guarantees each and every Kenyan to a clean and healthy environment. So this convention will enhance that rights.
I hope you do understand by the rules that you have only 5 minutes, so you don't have any more than 5 minutes. It's only the mover who has 20 minutes and everybody else has 5 minutes in this particular motion. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Believing that I am still within, because I am just making some very little contribution over the same in support of the mover. So I was saying, Honorable Speaker, Article 42 of our Constitution guarantees each and every Kenyan clean and healthy environment. So this convention will enhance that. Same to Article 69 of our Constitution that gives power to our state to eliminate anything that is going to be harmful to the lives of Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, if this House will approve, it will give a new image to this country, and we shall be equal with other countries that have approved this. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I second this motion. Thank you.
Honorable members, I now propose a question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining on its consideration of the ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and control and the control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, the 4th of May 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8, subsection 4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, approves the ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and the control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. The Member of Parliament for Funyula first, and then the Great will naturally come in here.
Honorable Speaker, as I stand to support, I support with the reservations. And my reservations are based on the text of the report itself and nothing else. Honorable Speaker, this is a document that was signed, that was originated and negotiated in 1991. 1991 up to now is several years, close to 30 years, Honorable Speaker. I really do not understand or believe that the context, the text, the terminologies, the remedies they offered, the manner they opted, they intended to cure, are still relevant and valid for now. Everybody will be wondering how it has taken Kenya all those years. It has taken the government all those years to bring the same to the National Assembly to basically approve. Second, Honorable Speaker, and the most damaging aspect of this convention, that it has no provision for reservation. Completely. It has no provision for reservation. Yet, the respective Act of Parliament, that is the Treaty Making and Ratification Act number 45 of 2012, requires the National Assembly may approve the ratification of a treaty with or without reservation. In essence, Honorable Speaker, what the committee is telling Kenyans and this House, that this House is merely a rubber stamp. We cannot raise any reservations. We can either reject or accept. Yet, the Act requires, Honorable Speaker, I'm seeking protection from the temporary Speaker who is conversing in high tones.
Honorable Ochieng.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. This
Proceed.
boy.
Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, in essence, there is a contravention of the law. Because if you can only have one way and no other way, then what's the purpose of this document coming to this House where we cannot raise any reservations or at all? Honorable Speaker, I really will need further guidance, and probably when the mover will be called upon to reply, we need to guide this House, to guide the country. That was this a false document to us? And if indeed it's a false document, again, Honorable Speaker, the provision to withdraw, and I want to read Article 27, which has Article 27, yes, which has provisions to withdraw. Honorable Speaker, and this is what it reads. At any time after 3 years from the date on which this convention has entered into force for a party, the party may withdraw from the convention by giving written notification to the depository. Withdrawal shall take effect 1 year after receipt. So essentially, Honorable Speaker, it says that if Kenya signs, if we ratify the treaty today, the earliest we can withdraw, because there was no reservation at all, there's nothing we can amend. The earliest we can withdraw, Honorable Speaker, is after hooping 4 years. What if there are very many offending clauses here? What do we do as a country? Do we live with this problem forever? For a full 4 years. Honorable Speaker, the chair of the committee needs to be very candid and tell Kenyans very clearly what we are signing for. And in his movie, he also has clearly said, Honorable Speaker, if there is anything that Kenya wants to do that probably offends these provisions or this treaty, they can withdraw. What happens 4 years waiting to withdraw? Honorable Speaker, again the assertion they have made in their report that they are not very strong, that in the committee observations, point number 6, that the present international regional national laws applying to Kenya has proven to be inadequate. So thus the country is therefore in dire need of a law. That's not true, Honorable Speaker. That's an exaggeration. It's not true. So that's why, Honorable Speaker, as much as I support with strong reservations, which I hope they'll be noted, and if there's anything that can be done, it can be done. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable KJ.
I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. The opportunity to speak to this motion is much appreciated. And Mr. Speaker, I would not stand and contribute to this without thanking the very able chair, the Honorable David Gekaria from Nakuru Town, and the seconder, the Honorable Member for Baringo Central, for Baringo South, for putting such a strong case for this ratification to be adopted by this House. Mr. Speaker, you would understand the passion with which I stand to support this ratification. Because I do understand, Mr. Speaker, that by adopting this ratification, according to our laws and according to the Constitution, it becomes a law of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And I, chairing the Committee of Communication, Information and Innovation, do have a pressing present matter, Mr. Speaker. The issue at hand is e-waste. The waste that accrues from the computers, from the phones, from the technological gadgets that are all being shipped into this country and at the rate in which they are being shipped in. Mr. Speaker, after our gadgets are used and utilized, we find that they find their way to the waste bin in our homes. Then they end up in our garbage pile outside our houses. They are collected and pulled in the small garbage site somewhere around the estate. Mr. Speaker, in this entire journey, all the way to Dandora dumping site and beyond, this waste leaves a footprint of damage, Mr. Speaker. Damage to individuals, damage to animals, damage to the environment, and this is growing at an ever-increasing rate. So, Mr. Speaker, I am keen to support the ratification of this treaty from Bamako that was agreed on in Bamako for that one reason, that we shall be clearing our e-waste, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, secondly, Kenya has an opportunity to race to the front of this race on climate change, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we might not be doing so well with our forest cover, but the new efforts of not only planting a tree, but growing trees, Mr. Speaker, is going to actually catapult us to be one of the greenest countries in the continent if the plan works, Mr. Speaker. If the president's plan of 15 billion trees in the next 4 years works out, we shall easily be one of the greenest countries in Africa. So, Mr. Speaker, as we await the September conference on climate change, under whose banner high delegations shall be meeting in Kenya under the chairmanship of our president, Mr. Speaker, then we have an extra reason to support the ratification of this convention, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I might not want to forget to mention that the waste that the chairman is talking about goes beyond e-waste. There is a lot of hazardous waste that finds itself to Kenya because our borders are ajar and open because we lack such instruments to regulate what comes in. Mr. Speaker, the president of this country had a very personal conversation with farmers at the beginning of this planting season. The president stipulated that there is a brand of fertilizer that has been making its way to this country through cartels who make money out of fertilizer for years on end, a fertilizer that has been banned in many countries around the world, Mr. Speaker. This fertilizer may look good on your crop. However, we might never be able to explain the cases of cancer that are happening at a very increasing rate, Mr. Speaker. This fertilizer was harmful. The farmers agreed with the president. They did not bring in that kind of fertilizer. They brought in the one that the president was recommending. And I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, in your drive around the country, you are seeing the bumper harvest that awaits in this harvesting season. Just because a decision was made that we shall not have people dumping fertilizer in our country, and we use a correct fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, you shall see how good a bumper harvest we shall get this year. And I'm sure the Vice Chair is agreeing with me because his is one of the constituencies that is growing maize using this fertilizer that the president recommended. So, Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of sticking to our constitution, in the spirit of managing e-waste, in the spirit of checking what comes into our country, and in the spirit of keeping our country green and clean, I support.
Maybe for the benefit of the members, the chair would want to explain whether this treaty has actually come into force or not. Because the presumption by the honorable member for Funyula is that it's going to take 3 years, although the text says that you can pull out any time. But if it's already come to force, then that any time will not take any time like 4 years from now. So can you, for the benefit of the members, clarify that particular issue?
Honorable Speaker, in my when I was moving this motion, Honorable Speaker, you know, it came here in 2003, but now it has not come into force in the country until this House approves, and then it goes. Then now when it's, but in other ways, the country has been trying.
Has globally, has it come into force globally? Usually a treaty.
Globally, yes.
Yeah, a treaty once negotiated, then it waits for a certain number of member states to ratify, then it comes into force globally. Now, if it has already come into force globally, do we still need an additional 3 years if the nation wants to pull out?
No, the 3 years that Mheshimiwa was talking about, it is when we want to withdraw from this convention. 3
years from ratification or 3 years from coming into force?
I think it is coming into force, Honorable Speaker. It is, yes,
Honorable
there is a notice
MP for Funyula, it's important for Kenyans and other members to understand exactly what we're debating.
Speaker,
yes.
The Constitution clearly says that a treaty or any law, international law only becomes into force upon ratification by the National Assembly.
In our country?
In our country. So it means it will apply the moment this House approves or adopts the report. So that's when the 3 years plus 1 year take effect. For example, if they adopt the report today, it means the first day of the 3 years starts today. That's the application of the law.
Is that provided in our constitution or it's provided in the
The
treaty?
Constitution.
That 3 years.
No, the Constitution says
It comes into force when we have ratified it.
yes.
But the global coming into force of the treaty itself is different from the time it comes into
And
force.
that's why, Honorable Chair, Speaker, if you look at Article 27, it's explicitly clear. And the Chair, when he was moving, was that the obligation to implement the treaty falls to the country adopting it. Okay. And it now says, Article 27 says, that after adoption of the treaty, it takes 3 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. The Honorable Member for Kwanza.
Mr. Speaker, I've sat here and I've listened to the member for Nyula, and I've also listened to the chairman. I think we are talking about the West, the harmful West in this country. Mr. Speaker, you don't have to actually be taken around, you don't have to do anything. Yourself, where you stay and where I stay, you see a lot of this harmful West. And I think as Kenyans, it's the last, in fact, I want to thank you, Chair, for having come up with this confession, and I want it to be implemented immediately. Because, first and foremost, we have suffered because of the side effect of this particular waste that comes in this country, where, Chair, and you know it, we don't have the mechanism and the knowledge to recycle them, to make them useless. All we do is that once this waste comes to this country, Mr. Speaker, you know it, it's just dumped at the Dandora site, yeah? And we have seen actually our boys and girls going to the Dandora site, coming up with these things, removing some of this wastage, and some of them are very harmful. I know of a neighbor who has a cousin there, and by handling those with bare hands, now the hands are actually frozen. I can prove that. So this particular confession, Chair, move with speed to be able to implement it as soon as done, so that it can be able to do what we're supposed to. We have seen recently these droughts that you are experiencing. I come from Trans-Nzoia. We have had that kind of thing, and Mr. Speaker, it's just a common sense that at least we should be able to move fast, to be able to sign this confession. And I'm happy that it has come, the time has come, and I ask this House, without any reservation, to actually do that, because one, we are not able, some of this waste that come from the developed countries, and you know that, the youth, you know that, some of them come and are useless. You can use it for only 2-3 days or once or a month or whatever, and then they go to waste. All you do, you dump it and buy another one and recycle, so that you find yourself having some of the gadgets here, Mr. Speaker, that are not useful at all. So this confession has come the right time, and this House should be able to look at the environment itself and actually approve, so that from there we can move what. And I know His Excellency the President is the chairman of the whatever, so that he can be able to move on the same. Chair, I think, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this without any reservation, and ask my colleagues, please, let's not bring in issues that are not helping our country. And if one, say, comes from the up country, we take him to this word, what do you call it? Yeah, the dump place. And you can see, Chair, Mr. Speaker, we have that problem, and therefore I support.
The Honorable Dr. Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity to contribute. Mr. Speaker, this is an extremely important debate, and I actually stand to support while acknowledging our delay, and therefore probably not taking advantage of the recent developments. This Bamako Convention, first of all, I support it because it's in line with all our constitutional and legal provisions, Article 2 of the Constitution, which says whatever we sign is part of our law. 69, which says we must take part to keep our environment safe. The Treaty Making and Ratification Act. So in that context, it's okay. Mr. Speaker, the big issue here is that this convention arises from another convention, which is the Basel Convention, which actually, I think it was in Belgium, but linked to Paris, where the developed countries actually agreed on how to move hazardous waste. However, that was weak. And in countries like ours or Africa, where there is no proper regulation, it made it possible for actually countries, particularly developed countries, to export hazardous waste to Africa. The Basel Convention was actually providing that for that export or movement, there has to be bilateral agreement between the countries. And it excluded some hazardous waste like radioactive materials. Then you immediately don't understand what they are talking about if they include that. So I support the Bamako initiative that came in and made it, the wording is much stronger and actually prohibits and includes things like the radioactive waste. So that it was noted that the Basel Convention was actually exposing Africa and other countries to hazardous waste. If you look at countries without regulation, if you look at countries where there's corruption, it's not inconceivable that people will actually accept that hazardous waste are imported or moved across countries at a cost. And there were cases, like I think in Nigeria, in Ivory Coast, where actually these wastes were found. So I support this. You are saying, when did it come into force internationally? That was sometime, I think, in 1998. A number of African countries have signed. And this Bamako one is basically an African agreement between African countries, which I think is desirable because we are actually the most vulnerable. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at the waste that we were talking about, if you talk of e-waste, look at all these computers we use, the laptops we use, the handsets we use. Where do they go? They have to be taken somewhere. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at the plastic waste or any other non-biodegradable material, where do they go? So they are actually exporting them to Africa. So Speaker, if you look at things like batteries, whether they are the ordinary batteries that we use that are actually based on acid, that when they are no longer useful, you throw them, but they still contaminate the ground with the acidic material in the batteries, this carbon-based. If you look at things like lithium batteries, those ones actually are radioactive. So these are things we use virtually every day. If you look at medical waste, there are some medical waste that are very hazardous and not easily removed. Where do they go? And some medical wastes are actually radioactive. Old X-ray machines, old scanning machines, where do these things go? And these are what we are actually being protected about. Some things we use actually contain mercury. And mercury is long-lasting. It goes in the environment. It contaminates the environment. And it is transmitted to unborn children. So, Mr. Speaker, this is actually a useful convention that we should sign and go with the other African countries that have signed it. I know what we need to do is to actually review it and look at advancements that come, and we amend what we need to amend. I agree with the Honorable Undo that it has come late, but it is something I support, we should sign. Mr. Speaker, people put this.
You can have 1 more minute, yes, proceed.
So, Speaker, these developed countries actually put these materials, then they concrete them, they put them in concrete, they put them in ships. They come and actually load them in our countries, either dig ground and put them, or actually put them in the sea. People are worried. They are all using nuclear energy. Where are they putting their nuclear waste? they don't know where to put them. So they are targeting us. Therefore, a convention like this, in my view, is the only protective mechanism that is in place now, and we should support it and upgrade our activities into it. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support signing this.
The Honorable Alice Nganga, followed by the Honorable Memusi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also stand to support the ratification of the Bamako Convention. Honorable Speaker, I don't know what the West country they think of us. You know, they like selling waste material in form of second-hand things. They let it come to the country, they call it, we are selling second-hand phones, second-hand computers, second-hand scanners, second-hand whatever this and that. And they know very well, by the time they were leaving the country, their country, they knew it was a waste. They did not know where to dispose this waste to. So they knew the best way, they knew how, is to dump it here in Africa. And especially in my constituency. I have a dumping site called Kangoki. And Honorable Speaker, they don't do it during daytime. They wait night. By the time you come in the morning, you find so many waste material, you don't know who brought it, where it came from, what is it for, and then you start realizing people start getting sick, diseases you cannot even explain. Because it has become a dumping site. They ask, I know they have also their cartels here in the country that guides them on where to dump and when to dump it. This ratification is timely. It is on point. We need to pass it immediately to protect our own country. Honorable Speaker, these gadgets are very acidic, very poisonous, both to the soil and to the human beings. And once they dust them, not only those places are used for even for other bad purposes. You find when somebody is killed somewhere, they are dumped at the site over there because they know before these people come, because they come to those places, they stay even longer because it smells very badly. You cannot go there. You cannot touch some liquids that are flowing if you don't know what kind of liquids are those ones. And it's only this Western country who knows what those liquids are all about. So this convention, we need to pass it like yesterday, Honorable Chair, and we thank you with your committee for finding it right and timely to bring it at this particular time to protect our country, our people, and even our farmers. Because once that soil, once you plant, you are wondering why crops are not doing very well. But the soils have already been damaged, poisoned. Nothing can grow out of that soil. And you know, you can think it's only that dumping area that affects that only dumping area. No, because of the climate change and because of the weather, the people from this region, they can smell that waste from another region. And you find they are becoming flu that does not end. You are wondering, where does this flu come from? It doesn't end. Our children are suffering. Even there is one honorable here who is sneezing. It is not here. It is not here, honorable member. It is not here. But it is outside there. So I stand to support the ratification, Honorable Speaker, and also to put as a warning to the Western nation. A time has come for Africa to rise, and to rise in a biggest way, in whatever way. Both financially, we are equal to to this task. We can have our own dollars, our own climate change ratifications, and also our own laws to guide us. We don't need to be running everything or getting everything from Western world. We have come of age. We can do things our own way, in our own method. We don't need them to come and teach us on how to do our own things. We know when they don't like us, Honorable Speaker, they only think of Africa when it becomes a dumping site like now. When they want to dump their things, Africa is very important. Oh, let us take this thing. We are helping the needy. We are helping them to have gadgets. We are helping them to have laptops. We are getting them to have phones, schools. And in their hearts, they know that these materials are coming to harm us. They are looking for us, for a place to dump their things and to dump their waste. But we have said no. Thank you, Honorable Chair of this committee, for bringing this ratification timely. Asante sana.
The Honorable Memusi of Kajiado.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And Honorable Speaker, let me start by thanking the Chair, together with his committee, for bringing this convention to the House for ratification. And let me say from the onset, Honorable Speaker, that I support. Honorable Speaker, now more than ever, we need to be very careful on how we deal with our environment. We have seen, Honorable Speaker, that if we don't take care of our environment, the devastating effects that causes to us is unbearable. Just the other day, Honorable Speaker, we went through a ravaging period of drought, where communities, especially the pastoralist community, lost a lot of their livelihoods. This, Honorable Speaker, will take us a very long time to spring back. Right now, that community is unable to take their children to school. And this is all because of not caring about our environment. We have also seen, as members have talked about here, the rise of diseases, for example, cancer. And this is straining families. Families are having to sell their land. Families are having to dispose of their property to be able to treat their loved ones. All this is as a result of a degradation of our environment. Honorable Speaker, this convention is important as the chair of the committee has moved. And I also challenge the chair of this committee, together with his committee members, to look at local legislation, because just as members have been contributing, it came to my mind that we've not been conscious of where our e-waste is going to. In the last Jubilee regime, the government talked about bringing computers to class 1 students. And scrupulous business people took advantage to bring in substandard computers, and private schools bought these computers, which were conking off after 6 months of use. Where did all these computers go to? Where were they? How were they disposed? All the gadgets that we use, phones that we all use, we might all be on our 10th or 15th phone. Where have all these phones been going to? So I would want to challenge the chair of the Environmental Committee, together with his team, to look at local legislation on how we dispose our e-waste. It is time we start taking care of our environment, because without taking care of our environment, Honorable Speaker, even in terms of food security, we are not secure. We are polluting our soils, and in turn, the same acreage that you used to get 20 bags of maize, for example, you are now getting 5. Land is now producing less. Land is being subdivided. Honorable Speaker, all these things will come to bite us. We will continue becoming poor. So it is time we become very conscious of our environment. With those few words, Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Honorable members, I wish to recognize the presence in our speakers gallery of Kenyans who live in the States and who have come on a visit to their own motherland and want to see how this August institution is working. And they are Frazia Kirwa. Could you just rise up and so that Kenyans can see, members can see you? Alex Kirwa, William Kungu, John Koros, and finally Jennifer Kogo. They are also largely relatives of our own Member of Parliament for Mosop, Abraham Kirwa. You probably would want to say 1 or 2 words, and then you want to say something? briefly, and then you contribute on the motion also, because I can see your name in here.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity and also getting an opportunity to recognize my relatives here who are visiting from America to see how Parliament actually operates. So thank you for that opportunity, and also for this opportunity to contribute to this motion on the ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and the control of the transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. Mr. Speaker, this motion is very timely. Africa has been considered as a place where all waste, either auction or inland, are dumped. We are going through a huge and a big problem in terms of climate change. And like a member mentioned a few minutes ago, that we have truly suffered as a nation in the last few months because of this issue of the climate change. And one of the issues, Mr. Speaker, that has contributed to a problem that we have is the dumping. Most of the transnational companies, they've chosen Africa as a place where you can dump anything and everything, just because we don't have systems that checks these hazardous waste that are brought in. We've mentioned computers, we've mentioned old phones, and many, many other things that end up in Africa and nobody checks on them. It is high time we talked about the rate of cancer that has truly gone up in the last few years, and we ask ourselves, why a very big, sharp increase in cancer? It's because of waste like this that nobody talks about it, nobody controls it, and as such, this ratification of this Bamako Convention between the African countries is going to really, really help. As of now, we have 29 to 30 countries that are ratifying to accept to say no to hazardous waste in our country. So I stand here, Mr. Speaker, to support the committee for bringing this particular motion to allow us as a country to ratify it, accept it, so that for the future of our generations and our children, Kenya will be a safe place. Our oceans and beaches will be very safe. Looking back, Mombasa and most of the beaches used to be beautiful some years back, but going back now there, it is so sad to see most of the places have been polluted. It has been a lot of dumping, has been made to be a dumping site instead of beautiful beaches. So I stand here, Mr. Speaker, to support this motion of ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of hazardous products in Africa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The MP for Kibwezi West is Honorable Metusi here. The Honorable Member for Marakwet West. Is it East? Marakwet North. Order, Honorable Members. Marakwet West, yes.
Marakwet West, yes. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to be on record as having supported this very good motion. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion on the ban of the importation of hazardous waste to Africa, and in particular, because we are signing it, we are ratifying it here, Mr. Speaker, in respect to Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this motion comes in at a very important time when Kenya is becoming a global champion in matters to do with environmental conservation. Mr. Speaker, in this country, we have an extremely progressive constitution. Mr. Speaker, Article 2.6 of our constitution provides clearly that any treaty or convention that has been ratified becomes part of the law of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, the effect of ratifying this convention means that Kenya, because a signatory, becomes part of the global community in matters to do with environmental conservation. Mr. Speaker, we have no reason for not ratifying this convention because, Mr. Speaker, we would not benefit as a country from other international benefits that other countries that have ratified benefit from. So, Mr. Speaker, we also need to know that Africa is facing a lot of challenges in terms of exposure of chemicals because of global trade. And, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, that challenge must be curbed through process of ratifying such treaties. But Mr. Speaker, even as in matters of procedure, I want to agree with the MP for Funyula, Mr. Speaker, that it is unfortunate that it is the first time that as a House we are encountering this international instrument. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the procedure of ratification, one, it is to do with negotiation of this international instrument. Number two is the signing of this treaty. Number three is the ratification. So, Mr. Speaker, this ratification comes in at the tail end, at the very end. So, Mr. Speaker, we must also as a House be on record so that when this document is being negotiated, the relevant committee of this House should be on the negotiation table. This document should be brought in the House before the final ratification, so that the members of this House, Mr. Speaker, when we are here on behalf of so many elected people. We represent a lot of people in this country.
Do you wish to be informed by Honorable KJ?
Yes, I know he's a learned man, can give me the information.
Proceed, Honorable KJ.
Mr. Speaker, mine is a very kind nudging, and I did not intend to even interrupt the flow with which the Member of Parliament was flowing with, because he was flowing very well. And he rightly said that there is a cohort of Members of Parliament who are interacting for the first time with international instruments. And that is very correct, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it is a matter that I had raised in the previous Parliament on how Parliament can be onboarded earlier in the conversation, not to be coming at the tail end when the ratification is happening. The truth of the matter is the procedure has been correct. This convention finds itself on the floor of this House in a very correct manner. It is only to add a voice to what the member is saying, that yes, there does exist a legislative gap, and legislative gaps are only cured in this House. So maybe it is even a legislative opportunity for the honorable member to take up, so that we can review how we ratify international treaties and acts before they get to the House. So, Madam Speaker, I wanted to note that when Kenya was ratifying an agreement between itself and the UK bilaterally in the last Parliament, I did rise in my place and flag the same exact issue that the member has flagged, and he is rightly in his place to take it up as a legislative proposal. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you,
Honorable Member for Marakwet, I hope you are duly informed.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm duly informed, and I will take up the matter so that we initiate an amendment to that effect. Madam Speaker, what I was saying is, during the negotiation stage, it is very important that the members of Parliament in this House, the National Assembly in its totality, be part of the negotiating table, so that when the document is brought to the House, the members of this House will have full knowledge of this particular convention or treaty, so that when we are at the process of ratifying, then the members will have full knowledge of the same. Nonetheless, Madam Speaker, I stand to be on record as fully supporting the ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban and importation of hazardous waste to Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Naomi Waku.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important motion on ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and the control of the transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. Madam Speaker, this motion has come at the right time when, as a country, we are encountering lots of challenges as a result of this. And if you visit different counties in our country, many are the times you hear of sicknesses that people do not know how they have gotten, and especially cancer that is taking the lives of many Kenyans. And sometimes, even when you go to rural areas like where I come from, of late, many people die of cancer and other diseases that they may not even be able to or to get any medication on. And all that happens as a result of this motion that we are talking about today. Madam Speaker, it is high time, because God has given us this opportunity, it is high time for Kenyans, and especially for members of parliament, to stand up and say enough is enough, just as we are debating today. Because the Bamako Convention was first negotiated by 12 nations of the Organization of the African Unity, and it has come into effect since 1998. And even if it has been effective, many are the times we realize that West management is not taken care of, and especially in Kenya, whereby even in small towns, even our own local waste management is not done in a good way. We have polluted our environment. We have destroyed the resources that God has given us. And if we want to overcome this, the only thing that we need to do is to take care of our environment, to stop the current pollution, and see how best we can take care of our land, so that the land can also take care of us. Our environment can also take care of us. I like the idea of us planting billions and billions of trees so that we can overcome some of the challenges. But unless we put our efforts together, unless we all develop the passion to do so, then we may not be able to realize. Madam Speaker, we know very well that as a country, we have enough policies in place. We have enough rules and regulations in place. We have all the things that we need, but unfortunately, implementation is not there. We have policies, and it is unfortunate that when it comes to implementation, we are not giving it any attention. Others come to our country, they learn from us, but they go and implement, and they improve their environment because of the passion they have, because of being committed to what they want to do. And our country has suffered because we have not given any attention to take care of our environment. Madam Speaker, many other times we invest a lot in our country so that we take care of in our dump site, but it is unfortunate that to date, many people suffer because of the diseases that get into our environment as a result of that. With those few remarks, I can only say that if we want to revive our economy, if we want to revive our social life, if we want to revive our health sector and improve, we can only invest in our environment. And I support the convention. Thank you, and the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member for Marsabit. The Honorable Julius Meli, Member for Tinderet constituency. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the motion tabled by the Chair, Committee of Environment and Forestry. Honorable Speaker, I just want to say that the Bamako Convention, or ratification of the Bamako Convention, is actually supported by the laws of the land. Our Constitution clearly supports that international laws that are ratified that actually become part of our Kenyan laws. And Honorable Speaker, when you look at the environment, it is all that actually supports life. A poor environment, Honorable Speaker, actually contributes to loss of life, both for human, plants, and animals. Honorable Speaker, if you look at hazardous waste, and this is a problem that is facing us today, it is quite expensive as a country if we don't control the disposal of hazardous waste. And Honorable Speaker, you realize that countries across the world, and more specifically the advanced nations, actually at times we manufacture items that actually has a lot of effect on our lives, if not well disposed. A few minutes ago, I had the honorable members talking about items such as phones, computers, chemicals or dispose of chemical cans, and many others, polythene bags and many others. If you look at all that, Madam Speaker, if these particular equipments or devices are not disposed well, it is going to be a cause of a number of illnesses, a number of diseases that is affecting us. And Honorable Speaker, you'll realize that as the medics will rightly put it to us, many of the diseases that we have in the society today are as a result of poor disposal of hazardous wastes. And this has affected our economy. Right now, or in this country, you'll have many families who use most of their resources to treat the sick. You'll use a lot of resources to try to heal the land, which could actually, at times it cannot produce enough food. That's why you'll realize that we go even to look for lime, we look for many other things to cure what could have actually been saved. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that even the Environment Management and Coordination Act of 1999, Honorable Speaker, speaks very clearly on what the government or the state has to do to protect the environment. And in doing so, it will assist this country to cap the transboundary or transborder transportation of waste. Even the lorries that move across the countries to our neighboring nations, when they come back, they will even bring containers that even some of our drivers, some of the people who carry them, are not aware of it. In some instances, some of the containers or some of the hazardous waste that are brought into the country, some of the people who bring them are not aware. And in fact, if this particular ratification is brought into force, it will actually stop the movement of such dangerous materials. Two, Honorable Speaker, every year, thousands of schools, institutions, government agencies dispose of computers. The manner in which these computers and devices are being disposed of is not actually very clear. And you'll realize that these are the same kind of items, these are the same kind of devices that will injure our environment in one way or another. Some of them tend even to dispose them into water bodies, thinking that they will actually maybe dissolve into those bodies, but in the end, we are going to suffer as a nation. So the fact that the Bamako Convention is trying to stop this transboundary movement, and even nations that are trying to propagate this, it will stop them and therefore enable our environment to be safe, and it will therefore be safe for men, animals, and even the plants of the earth. I support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Jackson Kosgei, nominated member. Bishop.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. From the onset, I support this motion on hazardous waste, and it was given in the and signed by this country through a convention. As we all know, properties that are no longer useful to any society and created either through industrial as an industrial product or whatever it is, that becomes so dangerous and capable of harming human beings and the environment, is an hazard that requires an attention in what they call the chain of manufacturing, so that in our trades and importation of products that are used by the citizens of this country, responsible ministries and authorities must make sure that as we import these particular properties, we will take care of disposability of the same at the end, when we no longer have use to the same. It comes to us through industrial manufacturing, and even as we lead ourselves in Africa and in our country to develop, to manufacture, we must pay attention to that chain, that we manufacture a product, we mix some properties, but at the end of the day, we will no longer use it. Madam Speaker, we should pay attention to this, and so much that we are prepared for the disposability of the same. Thirdly, we in Africa must now make sure that we put to action, now that we ratify in this country and several of our countries are ratified in Africa, we must be proactive in protecting our people and protecting our environment, and take responsibility and make sure we live in a safe environment. Also, Madam Speaker, we should hold companies that are importing these products with the possibility of being hazardous to our society. Even those who are importing more automobiles, electronics, they are working in the telephone communication in this country. They should tell us what is there. As you license them, as we monitor them, we need to know how and what is the preparation they have in the disposal processes. With that, Madam Speaker, I support this motion.
Thank you very much, Bishop. The Honorable James Nyikal, member for Seme. You are on the radar. The Honorable Wilberforce Oundo, member for Funyula. Honorable members, I'm just trying to focus on the, so if you have already spoken, then you're not going to speak. The Honorable Paul Biego, member for Chesumei. Already spoke. The Honorable Joseph Makilap, member for Baringo North.
Put a question.
We have not spoken. Oh.
The Honorable Ekomas Mutuse, member for Kibwezi West. Honorable members, I think there could be, we may need to look at the system. The Honorable Geshimu Gidiji, member for Geshogo. Kindly trace the member for Gishugu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this ratification of this convention, Bamako Convention, because it touches on very important issues in this country, the issues of environment. And Madam Speaker, I've just noted from the report that this convention was signed by the Kenyan government on the 17th of December 2003. And I rise to, I also commend this committee that has come, that has taken over this matter, because this matter has been lying somewhere for all those years. And the issues of environment are very, very critical in this country. We also commend our president, who has been spearheading and who is the hand of the issue of environment in Africa, because through him, this matter has been able to find its way to this parliament for approval of this ratification. Madam Speaker, one of the issues that we've been grappling with is the issues of actually donations, which have been put very well by the chairman. We've been getting so many stuff for donations in this country, but in essence, those countries are actually disposing their wastes. That needs to be taken very seriously. In fact, we should follow up through the committee to make sure that all the materials that are donated in this country, either through education or even through the Ministry of Health or whichever angle, are also taken through the KEBS verification of the standards that we require in this country. So I believe that is an area that we should be very keen. We don't just pick things from there in the guise of assisting our people, but actually those people are actually making or dumping hazardous waste in this country. Madam Speaker, I also think that our efforts through the current government, led by the President, to preserve environment should also be respected by the other countries, so that when a decision has been made, actually that should be respected by actually making sure that this convention is followed to the letter. Madam Speaker, a lot has been spoken, and actually I do not intend to belabor all that has been said, but I just thought I must rise and support, because it comes at a very critical time when this government is taking matters environment very seriously for the benefit of the Kenyans for today and prosperity. Thank you, and I support.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Jackson Lekumontore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Lekumontare. Yeah, I rise to support the report. And Madam Speaker, this is a very important report and beneficial to our country. I think, Madam Speaker, there are so many hazardous materials which sometimes get way to our country. And approving this or ratifying this convention, Madam Speaker, it will help us a lot. There are so many harmful materials, Madam Speaker. And in fact, in some places in this country, there are materials which has been dumped in some places which are now affecting even livestock and human beings. And they are dumped there long time ago. So, Madam Speaker, our environment is very important, and this is one way of taking care of the environment. And Madam Speaker, as a country, we have learned a lot that we really need to work and improve what we have, because there are so many things already which has come to us. And Madam Speaker, if we don't take care, we may be affected so much when it comes to these harmful materials which are affecting our people. If you look at even the industries, Madam Speaker, they are releasing so many bad things to the environment. And as long as we want to look at this convention, even internally, it is very important to take care of our environment. And Madam Speaker, if this one is taken care of, I think we'll have a lot of good land and very spacious to the people. And I think even of late, Madam Speaker, Kenyans are talking a lot about even the GMOs. It therefore means we really need to protect our environment and the people in our country. And anything which bring threats to environment, we have to work and protect the environment, Madam Speaker. So I think it is a very important convention, timely to us, and I think we really need to ratify for the sake of our country. So, Madam Speaker, thank you for the chance. I support.
Thank you. Honorable, the Honorable Charles Kamuren. That means that because your name is also appearing on the screen, the Honorable Catherine Omanyo, is it your intention to speak on this motion? Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really support the motion because some of the nations abroad have treated Africa as a dumping site. They had eclipsed us into thinking that they really care. But when they realize that some of these objects or things that they came up with are hazardous and can cause problems, and they don't want to dump those things in their nation, they bring them to Africa. So it's a high time we took charge of ourselves, took charge of our environment, took charge and made sure that for anybody abroad who wants to maybe bring anything here or import anything within our boundaries, the things are not hazardous and are not radioactively, bad. So I also I'm backing it by saying that we should not be taken as a dumping site. Thank you.
Very much. The Honorable Mwafrika.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to top up the support of the Bamako Treaty. Madam Speaker, this treaty seeks to stop the importation of hazardous and radioactive waste in Africa, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we need also to take initiative as African countries on how to implement this treaty by way of controlling and minimizing the transboundary crossing of these developed countries which come to Africa to dump their waste. And Mr. Speaker, I believe the developed countries know that once they dump these wastes in Africa, as a result of that, all the diseases which may be caused by this waste, they know that we shall go to their countries to seek for treatment. So, Madam Speaker, this treaty, it is very good if we can come up with some ways of how to implement it, and also the consequences of those countries which probably will not observe the conditions of this treaty, Madam Speaker. I support Madam Speaker, and I make a call to all African countries to rise to the occasion and make sure that this treaty is implemented to the letter, Madam Speaker. I support.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Benziba. Try to trace the Honorable Benziba on my left.